Hi, everybody, again. It's Steve here with the second episode of The Ant and the Elephant Decoded Fear of Change. So let's get on with it. We'll go back to the beginning of the Ant and the Elephant story, and we know that Adir's ant colony is in the middle of a fierce storm, and Adir is woken by his buddy, and he realizes the ants are scurrying around trying to preserve their anthill in some way. And so he first of all observes that they're running around like ants with their heads cut off, and then he tries to call to them. He says, "You're going the wrong way." He notices that what they're doing is actually making things worse. They're just scrambling around in a chaos. So, have you ever felt as though you were part of a group and they were going the wrong way, running around like their heads were chopped off? Well, this was my experience when I was working at the college that I was teaching at, Wyndham College. They had fired the president, but they hadn't realized that his brother was a banker who controlled the bridging loan that kept the school going between when the tuitions from the previous year had run out in May and the new ones started to come in September. And so they had no way to fill this gap and were facing bankruptcy. And so, of course, they ran around as though their heads were chopped off. I'd already decided I was actually going to be leaving, heading off to London, despite the fact that I was not going to be able to start a program there. So the next point in the story goes something like, "There's suddenly an enormous bolt of lightning illuminated the sky. In that moment, Adir paused to look at his colony. The electrifying flash captured the pandemonium. It was as though the whole colony was standing frozen in time." So the bolt of lightning is like a bolt from the blue. It's a symbol for dramatic change, and perhaps all of you could relate to a time when there was a bolt from the blue and your life changed. This reminds me of something said by one of the early Greek philosophers, Heraclitus. He said, "Lightning steers the world." And of course, Zeus, the head of the gods, is symbolized by throwing lightning bolts. So lightning is something also to do with destiny. And so what happens is that Adir is swept along by the wind. He tumbles through the air, and when the wind dies down, he realizes that he's far from his colony. He's completely lost his bearings, and his life has changed forever. All of the comforts of the colony are gone, and he has to really start his life anew. So he wakes up confused, and immediately he felt anxious and sick in the pit of his stomach. So he's gripped by fear or angst or ang, which is a constriction, as though you're in a vice or a grip. And this constriction creates paralysis. So what do you do in the face of fear, in the face of change, in the face of confusion, in the face of not knowing what to do? So this is my situation when I did arrive in London and realized my life had changed forever. I wasn't going to be able ever to go back, and I thought ever to work again. Now, of course, it didn't turn out that way at all. Quite the contrary. I was actually in a transition to a new and more flourishing life. So this is, again, harkens back to Plato's allegory of the cave, an allegory I discussed in the Happiness, A Thinking Person's Guide to Flourishing book. And that is that when we make a transition out of the cave, out of darkness and shadows and into the light of day, because our eyes have been so used to the shadows, when we get out into the light, we feel blinded by the light. So it's going to take some time for us to get adjusted to our newfound light or lightness or the light of the day, or being outside the cave, or being in a closer to reality. So in my case, it took quite some time. I was depressed and couldn't get out of bed for quite some time, until finally I realized that I had to get up, get out, and start to do something to begin life again, to begin a new life. And what I learned from my mentor was that there's nothing to fear. Now, of course, that has a double meaning, or resonates. When we say there's nothing to fear, it's the nothing or no thing that we tend to fear, but nothing is, in a way, not a thing, but it is. So our very being is involved in something that is, in a way, fearful, because at any moment, when we're old enough to be born, we're old enough to die or not to be, and the dissolution or annihilation of ourselves is the nothing that we fear. However, this is what enables life to have meaning, that unless there was a time-sensitive, moment-by-moment present, we would extend into a meaningless, indefinite grayness. So the meaning of life in every moment becomes more poignant when we let anxiety turn into wonder and enthusiasm and excitement, and awareness of being in the present moment and still being, just being there. And of course, what Adair does then discover is that he's there, that he's able to be, he's able to continue his life, he's able to survive. And so from the point of survival, at this baseline of simply being there and surviving, his life is still